So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. And we have here people from Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Edinburgh, and London. Of course, we have Edward Johnson now in the first couple of minutes with us. We have people from Colombia, and Gabriel Angarita. He's the CEO of a major gemological laboratory in Bogota. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in Bogota, and he's here with us. So muchas gracias, Gabriel. Thank you very much for being there. We have India, Australia, Portugal, Denmark, even the United States. Wow, it's a full room. Thank you very much for coming. This actually, it's the repetition of our very first webinar on emeralds, but because it was the same thing, I made a few changes. So it's not exactly the same slides, and I will tell new stories, and you will see new photographs. So the topic today is emeralds, right? So this is kind of a repetition of the one we've made like more than 1 month ago. And what we will cover today is a little bit of mineralogy, not that much. It's going to be really simple to explain what is an emerald and what does it mean when we say an emerald. We will also address the very old Nueva Granada emeralds, which are the Colombian emeralds. That's the traditional source for high quality emeralds, which is today's Colombia, but it used to be named Nueva Granada when the Spanish were there. And also, because of that historical account, we will give you I will give you a series of historical artifacts embellished with lovely, outstanding, beautiful emeralds from that part of the world. We will also see some emeralds from elsewhere, and we will discuss other origins like Zambia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Brazil. And we will also look a little bit into the determination of origin. How do labs go into the stone and determine the origin? And we'll see that that is not an easy question. What we will not cover, it's the history of synthetics, because we know synthetic emeralds, they have been researched for many, many years, but they have been available since the first half of the 20th century. Commercially available. We will not deal with the history of treatments nor the gemological identification, but on treatments we have with us today Gabriel Angarita. He's the CEO of CDTEC, which is I'm going to try to say this in Spanish, Centro de Desarrollo Tecnológico de Esmeraldas Colombianas, which means it's Center of Development of Colombian Emeralds, something like that. So he's an expert on emeralds, an expert on an emerald treatment identification, and he will tell us all in his very simple words what's involved when you treat, when you fracture fill an emerald. So stay until the end. It's a privilege to have us, Gabriel, with us today. So let's begin. And this is the most complicated slide on the whole presentation. So I'm going to define what is an emerald. Emerald is a variety of one mineral that is called beryl. And beryl is also the name of a larger mineral group, also named beryl, that has 6 mineral species. The names of those mineral species are those complicated names that you see there. Maybe those of you that are gemologists, you know beryl as a mineral species. You also know pezzotatite as a mineral species. And those of you that love inclusions, which are the things that we see inside the stones, you know John Cayovola, and so you might know John Cayovolite, which is a new beryl group mineral species approved last year in honor of John Cayovola, the famous photomicrographer from GIA. So this is the beryl group, but beryl, the mineral species, doesn't have that fancy formula that you see on top. Forget the formula, that's too technical. Has a simpler formula that for those that don't understand formulas, that's complicated enough. But what I want to say is, emerald is a variety of one mineral, that is beryl, that is part of a larger group of minerals that is called the beryl group. We also know that there are more gemstones that belong to the mineral species that we call beryl. And we have here, let me try to put my mouse with a different color so you can, okay, now you see a red dot. We have the blue beryl that we call aquamarine, We have the yellow beryl, we call it Heliodor, and sometimes if it is more golden, we call it golden beryl. We have, of course, emerald here in the bottom, and we have the pinkish beryl. It's called morganite. We don't see here the colorless beryl, has the name of goshenite, and we see here the red beryl that sometimes we hear the name, we hear like a trade name of bixbyte. But bixbyte, some of you know the name, but bixbyte is a non-accepted trade name. And let me explain you why really quick. Because there is another mineral from the same locality called bixbyite, which is named after the same guy. The guy's name was Bixby. And so bixbyite is a mineral. And so a trade name for a gemstone called bixbyte, it would be really similar. So bixbyte never stuck. So it's not, for Sibjo, it's not an accepted trade name. Some traders today, they advocate that one should call this very rare gem quality beryl a red emerald. But again, a red emerald is not an accepted trade name by Sibjo, which is the World Jewelry Confederation, and is supporting this webinar. So I wouldn't be advocating something different than Sibjo, of course. So emerald itself, many years ago, used to be defined like this. It would be a green beryl colored by chromium. Some of you have heard this. If you read books, mineralogy books or gemology books prior to 1960s, this is what you see as a definition. But everything changed in the 1960s when this gentleman, Brazilian gentleman, actually he was Belgian, but he went to Brazil before to run away from the Holocaust. Jules Roger Sauer, he was the father, some say the father of the colored gemstone industry in Brazil. We see him here with a nice stack of Brazilian emeralds. And on the 60s, he discovered emeralds in Bahia in one mine called Salininhas, that chromium was not the major coloring agent. And he had problems getting those nice green beryls being accepted as emeralds. And he fought a lot, and GIA, the Gemmological Institute of America, on those days headed, it was led by Richard T. Lidicote, they finally accepted vanadium as a coloring agent for beryl to an accepted emerald as a trade name. And after that, it was quite easy to the others to accept. And today, we know that an emerald is a green beryl that is colored by vanadium or chromium, sometimes with a little bit of iron that is also involved in the color of emerald. But recently, and I will show you the link for this fantastic job by SSCF, which is the Swiss Gemmological Institute. It has been on the trade, green beryls like those ones, you see large one, 170 carats, 220 carats. They have been on the market and they have been called emeralds. And some people say, oh, they cannot be called emeralds because iron is the major coloring element, not chromium, not vanadium. But this is a debate. I'm not going to enter that debate. Sibjo is currently discussing on the Gemmological Commission how to deal with variety names and with trade names in this particular situation. SSCF has its own view, and this is a slide from a SSCF work that is publicly available online. You will have the link of this in the end, but this is an ongoing debate. But some of you might have had already seen on the market really large green beryls, large emeralds, if you wish, from the very small production in Afghanistan that look like this. So this is quite interesting indeed. But let's go ahead. The name emerald, like other names in the industry, like ruby, have also been used to define other gemstones that have nothing to do with emeralds. And here you see a list of many misnomers, meaning that they are erroneous trade names. They are not emeralds. None of those so-called emeralds are actually emeralds. We even see glass, like the Medina emerald. It was a trade name for a green glass, or the Indian emerald. Although there are some small production of emeralds in India, those Indian emeralds were actually quartz that was heated and then cooled so that it could be cracked. And then inside the crack, green dye was introduced. So, and we call them quench crackled quartz. So it's a really nice quartz imitation. So as you see, when you see emerald in old textbooks and sometimes in the internet, sometimes you might not be talking about emeralds at all. The real emeralds are the ones that are beryls colored by vanadium and chromium, sometimes a little bit of iron. And now there is a debate because of that, those big ones, but that's another story. Historically, emeralds have been found particularly in Egypt. And Theophrastus, and also he was tutor of Alexander the Great, and Pliny the Elder, he was that scholar that died in the Vesuvius eruption in the year of 79 near Naples. They, in their fantastic documents, books that they wrote on natural history, they already mention emeralds from a certain area near the Red Sea. And we know today that those emeralds were actually in the area, and even Cleopatra in the turn of the millennia, she explored, not her, but the slaves of Cleopatra, they explored those emerald mines. And we have a lot of artifacts of Roman times and Egyptian Roman artifacts embellished with local emeralds. And this is quite an example of that kind of emeralds. Note that the fashioning style is not a cabochon, is not like a faceted stone, are just the crystals that are merely polished and drilled to be set on a necklace or to be set elsewhere. So this is interesting. And if you come to Lisbon to the Gulbenkian Museum, we have one necklace similar than this one there for you to see. So when this is over, come to Lisbon and visit us. Another old source, normally people don't speak much about this old source, is Austria. And Austria in the Alps, in Abbastal, since the year 200, we know that emeralds with nice quality have been picked up in there, in that rock, which is called the mica schist. And some medieval artifacts, possibly even this really historical piece of jewelry for Europe, which is the imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire. We see here sapphires, we see pearls, we see other gemstones, spinels probably, but those emeralds in there, I don't know if they were already studied, but most probably those are from Austria. So, and this is quite a nice thing. We know, however, that Alexander the Great, the Macedonian that had Theophrastus as a tutor, he went all the way from Macedonia to India, right? And so he crossed Afghanistan, Pakistan, basically the Silk Road. And Theophrastus, he mentions that in Bactria, and Bactria was a region on the way from Macedonia to the Orient, where is today Pakistan and Afghanistan, that had emeralds. And they are reportedly references of very old treasures, Indian treasures, having emeralds from this area. We know today that Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even China in Davdar, we know that emeralds come from there. So the interesting thing, and Gaston Giuliani, a notable geologist from France, and he studies isotopes, and we will see some of his research in the end. He tried to make a relationship between old artifacts, the emeralds in old artifacts, and emeralds from known localities in this area to demonstrate that probably in antiquity, not only Egypt and Austria, but also Asian emeralds were around. So interesting research and based on isotopes, which is a technical thing. This is a parcel of emeralds from Afghanistan. Look at the quality. They are really, really good quality. Again, here from, this is from a recent research from Afghanistan. You will have the study that shows this picture, you will have tomorrow on your email, because it's a quite interesting study, and the emeralds are quite fantastic. They are really clean, nice quality Asian emeralds. So, but probably the most important historically are the ones from Nueva Granada. So the Spanish, they used to call it that, but we call them Colombia today. But we know that the pre-Columbian civilizations, they did like and they did cherish emeralds quite a lot. So it goes back a long time before the Spanish got there. And the Muiscas, which is a local civilization in there, they did like emeralds, and they give it a really big importance culturally. But the Spanish, of course, they wanted to get a hold of those emeralds, and eventually only decades before they arrived, could they actually reach the mining site in the tropical forests around the Boyaca region, which is about northeast of Bogota. So it's not easy to get there. It's quite in the bush. So eventually they discovered Chivor, and then the Muso was discovered even later. So after the 16th century, large amounts of fine quality emeralds with a quality and a transparency that didn't compare at all with the Egyptian and with the Austrian material started to arrive in Europe. And this is the kind of quality. Look at the amazing color of this crystal. By the way, this is some crystal like this, you don't cut and polish. You put it on a collection. This is museum quality specimen. This was on display in New York in the Wilensky Gallery a couple of months ago. And I want to call your attention to this. Look, do you see those white things? These are internal characteristics. Sometimes in gemology, we don't call it defects, but if you are buying, you call defects. If you are selling, you call it characteristics. But anyway, those internal characteristics, they are inclusions, and they are usually fissures, cracks, fractures, and that is normal for emerald. Aquamarine, that is the same as emerald in terms of mineralogy, which is the same mineral, usually doesn't have any fissures. Emeralds, particularly depending on the origin, it's normal to have those fissures. The same with ruby. Ruby, it's really rare, really eye clean or loop clean ruby. Also, to have a really nice quality, nice color, and clean emerald is quite rare. So emeralds almost always have fissures or internal characteristics. That's why sometimes we have to treat them and to fill them with some substances that Gabriel Angarita, he will explain you in another nice, fantastic, awesome crystal from Colombia. Look at the color, fantastic. We know, of course, the emeralds from Colombia had to travel from Americas to Europe. And of course, there was no planes. Today, also no planes, because no planes are flying, but on those days it was by boat. And the boats would carry silver, gold, pearls, and also emeralds. Because tropical waters can be tricky, some of those ships, they sunk. And this was a shipwreck in Mexico, in Yucatan, called the Anclamacuca shipwreck, where this guy, he was just diving for normal archaeological thing. He wouldn't expect to see gold or emeralds, but this is what he found. And this is absolutely outstanding. But if you think this is outstanding gold, emeralds, and amethysts, look at this. And look at this is interesting because this part over here, it's put over there, probably it rotates. Interesting. And again, if you find this quite interesting, and this is made with local gold, with Yucatan gold, look at this amazing piece of art that you can visit because it's open. Maybe now it's closed. The Museo de Arqueología Subacuática Fuerte de San José el Alto in Campeche. Sorry about my Spanish accent, but it's something like this. So it's an archaeological museum in Campeche, in Mexico. So if you travel to Mexico, make sure you visit this museum, and they have a whole lot of jewelry pieces. And this crocodile, look at the crocodile. Those are Colombian emeralds. Those are diamonds, most probably Indian diamonds, and that is local American gold. And this is an aesthetical thing that we are not used to. This was for local consumption. This is absolutely amazing. And it's in there, it's on exhibition, public exhibition. I'm sure everybody is taking pictures of this right now. I would. If we come to Europe, we see also the use of local emeralds in typical Iberian style. This is typical Iberian, Portuguese or Spanish. I must remember you that Portugal was under Spanish domination for 60 years, from 1580 until 1640. Then we got rid of the Spanish. Now we are friends, but we got rid of the Spanish on those days. And this is typically, we cannot say if this is Portuguese or if it is Spanish, because it's from that same period. And we see here the lavish use of Colombian emeralds. Again, I don't know if I showed you on my social media, I use this picture quite a lot. It's rose-cut diamonds from India, probably. Really nice Sri Lankan essonite garnet, orange garnet, and fine Colombian emerald. It's absolutely fantastic, those emeralds. But if you go to New York, and if you live in New York, go to the Met, and this is the Corona de los Andes. Now you cannot say crown in Spanish, because crown is Corona, but this is the crown of the Andes. But this Corona de los Andes, it's the name. And you see here, the bottom part is 17th century, and the arches, they are 18th century. And this is absolutely marvelous. And look at the quality of the emeralds. And by the way, look at the drops. And if you come to Lisbon, if you visit the Museu Nacional de Arte Antiga, Antique Art Museum, our best museum for jewelry, you can see drops pretty much like this one. And look at the size. That is my, I don't have small hands, so this is quite big drops. I don't think they are earrings because they are quite heavy, but the style is pretty much similar of those hanging things. And you can see also in some Mughal jewelry, so those pear-shaped drops. So the drops are quite nice. Here you see the example, what I'm trying to mean. Also, this is a typical Portuguese jewelry piece, and it was made in silver with diamonds set in silver, and the emeralds always set in gold. We don't usually see emeralds set in silver. Emeralds is almost always set in gold. And for me, personally, this is the best artifacts with emeralds that I have ever seen in my life. Go to Bogota. It's called La Lechuga. Lechuga in Spanish means the lettuce. It's alface in Portuguese. It's that green thing that the kids don't like to eat in salad. So it's called La Lechuga because it's green. And when you look from far away, it looks green, which is, by the way, a really nice color in football. And it's on, this piece took 7 years to assemble. It has more than 5 kilos of pure gold and has almost 1,500 emeralds. And look at the quality of those emeralds. And having almost 1,500 emeralds is already an achievement. But when we look at the emeralds, and when you verify that the color is the same, they are almost all eye clean, and the color is top quality. This kind of quality is like probably from Musso. This is quite rare to assemble such an amount of emeralds of this quality. I mean, only in the 20th century, only on the 18th century when this was made. This is absolutely amazing. This is my favorite. It's called a monstrance in English, custodia in Portuguese, ostensório is another name, because usually for Catholics, the Holy Sacrament or the Holy Host is put in here. Curiously, in my country, where the Holy Host is put around gold and sometimes diamonds. Here, natural pearls. It's interesting. And this is for you not to see me, but to see the size, not my size, but the size of the monstrance is quite big. Those that know, you know that I'm not very tall, but I mean, this is a quite big monstrance. And look at the size of the emerald. This is absolutely outstanding, out of the ordinary. Go to Bogota and visit the Museo near the bank of Bogota, and you will not repent. It's really worth a visit. And I don't have any arrangement with the bank of Bogota. I'm going to unshare my screen to show you a really important piece of jewelry that we have here in Portugal, which is, hold on a second, this one. You see? This is a box of chocolates. Actually, it's not a box of, this has 30 years old. And this lace that you see over here, it belongs to the Portuguese crown jewels. And they did bonbons of chocolate using, and we discover. So for those that collect boxes with jewelry, this is quite nice. It's just because I'm remembering chocolate, and we are all at home, and maybe we are all eating much more than we can, and we are all turning into cabochons or beads. But this is interesting thing. But if you want to see the real emerald, the real lace, this is the one. Ta-da! This is quite big. And if you come to Portugal in 2021, hopefully, all the crown jewels will be on display, and you can see this beautiful 18th century lace on display there with fine Colombian emeralds and Brazilian diamonds. In Islam, we know that the favorite color of the Prophet was green. So that's why, maybe that's why so many Islamic countries have green on their flags. And we see a lot of use of emeralds, particularly in Mughal civilization artifacts. And this is a really fine example of the Mughal emeralds, a 5-centimeter emerald with inscriptions in there. And also the Maharajas, if you like auctions, the Mughal and Maharaja magnificence that took place last year in Christie's, you see this kind of lavish use of carved large emeralds, and this is a fine piece by Cartier, another fine piece by Cartier with a carved Colombian emerald. See the drops, interesting, the use of drops again. And if you turn it around, it turns into a different jewelry. So this is a lavish use of emeralds. Of course, it's very hard to give a talk on emeralds and not mention this clock or watch. I don't know how to say in English. It's a machine that gives the time, and it's from the London Museum, and it's part of the Cheapside hoard, which is it was a treasure that some jeweler back in the 17th century, maybe he was running away from something, or maybe he had to flee from London because there was a coronavirus, so he didn't want to spend his isolation in London, so he went to the country house. He couldn't take the jewelry with him, so he stashed all his jewelry, gold, gemstones, findings, everything into a box, and he stashed it in behind his apartment or his house. He passed away, of course, and he didn't tell anybody, so this was found 350 years later. And this is a nice treasure of hundreds of jewelry pieces, not yet on public display, but they will be eventually at the London Museum. And this is a really nice example of a use of an emerald crystal. For those of you that are mineralogists or know mineralogy, you know that the emerald mineral is hexagonal in terms of its growth, in terms of its crystallography. So it's not unusual to see an hexagonal shape on an emerald, meaning that maybe if you had the prism like this, they just cut the emerald in this way so you can see this, the hexagonal. Of course, this is not hexagonal, just to give you an example. And we see the emeralds in the 19th century and early 20th century were quite looked for tiaras, and tiaras or diadems, if you prefer, sometimes have really nice emeralds. This is a very famous example, the Donnersmarck tiara, and this is a Queen Victoria's emerald tiara. It was put on display not that long ago in London, and here we can see, and it was designed by Prince Albert, which is amazing. This gentleman over here, he designed for his wife, Victoria, and here we see on this painting, Victoria using the tiara or the diadem. Well, let me click again. And of course, this is a really nice Boucheron tiara. It's called the the Greville Emerald Kokoshnik tiara. It's called Kokoshnik. Kokoshnik is a Russian word standing for something that is bigger like this. I don't know how to translate, but it's Kokoshnik, and it has a really nice Galopim emerald in there from Boucheron 1919. And of course, Queen Elizabeth has this really famous and has a very interesting story, the Duchess Vladimir Romanov tiara that belonged to a Romanov, and then it could leave Russia before 1917. And the Queen Elizabeth, she uses this tiara on very important occasions. Lovely emeralds in there. Oops. And by the way, you see the necklace also with nice emeralds, and you see here one diamond, right? This diamond is no other than one of the Cullinan diamonds. We know the Cullinan diamonds for being on the scepter of the imperial the imperial scepter of Great Britain, also on the imperial state crown, which is that crown that also has the Black Prince ruby, which is a spinel, and this one, this big chap over there. And here we see the Cullinan 3 and 4, quite 60 carats and 90 carats approximately. And here we see one of the lesser Cullinan. So just an interesting thing for those of you that like diamonds. This one is emerald with one of the Cullinan diamonds. If we travel around the world and see emerald treasures, we might stop in Istanbul and visit Topkapi, and we see this dagger, and which has 3 amazing emeralds in there. This is really famous dagger. Of course, the Qajar style kind of jewelry, Qajar in Persia, also has a lavish use of emeralds. We also see, and this is really famous, the crowning of the last Shah of Persia, Reza Pahlavi, and also, of course, the very famous Queen and Empress of Iran wearing the crown that you can see here. And Faradiba was wearing this almost 2-kilogram crown with natural pearls, rubies, and this emerald is about 150 carats, quite big. Van Cleef and Arpels, they traveled to Tehran specifically in the 1960s and spent 6 months there building not only this crown, but many other jewelry pieces for the coronation ceremony. And they even, after building the real one that is today at the bank, at National Bank in Tehran, they made a replica, and the replica usually sometimes it goes around the internet as the real thing. This is a replica made by Van Cleef, and sometimes it's on exhibition, but the real one is actually in Tehran. It's not anywhere else. Sometimes we forget, when we address emeralds, we forget to speak about other sources of important historical emeralds. But those only started in the 19th century. And Russia discovered emeralds in the 19th century, particularly in the 1930s in the Ural Mountains. And many jewelry pieces were made with local emeralds on those days. This is quite a famous one. This is the diamond and emerald tiara of the Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fedorovna. Forgive me my Russian accent, but it was made by a local, really famous local jeweler, Bolin, and the original emeralds were actually from Russia, but this is a photograph of the tiara as it is today, and I'm not sure if they are still the same emeralds or not, but that's a detail. Of course, in Africa, emeralds were also found in South Africa and Gravelotte in the late 19th century. And then we have emeralds also in Mozambique, and notably in Madagascar, in Zambia, and in Ethiopia. In Zambia, there is a big deposit of fine quality emeralds, and sometimes not only really nice colored emeralds and good quality, as you can see on here, but sometimes huge crystals can be found in the Kagem gem fields, emerald mines. So sometimes really good quality emeralds come from Africa, not necessarily from Colombia. And quite recently, and this is Vincent Pardieu, he was our guest last week for the webinar. Ethiopia, normally we don't think in Ethiopia as a gem source, but today it has opals, hydrophane, sapphire, and also emeralds, like this beautiful set of these saturated, not strongly saturated emeralds, but quite clean and quite nice quality colors. And so whenever we think about quality emeralds, now we saw during this webinar, of course, Colombia, we saw Zambia, we saw Afghanistan. Remember those fine emeralds from Afghanistan? I didn't show you Pakistani material, but also really good. And now I'm showing you some Ethiopian material, and I could show you Madagascar material, also really high quality eventually. And we cannot talk about emeralds without speaking about Brazil. We mentioned in the beginning, because it was because of one Brazilian source with salininhas that vanadium was accepted as a coloring agent for emeralds. But Brazil today also produces significant quantities in Minas Gerais, in Bahia, and in Goiás. And it's along with Colombia, the two major world producers of emeralds. Zambia also is a major producer. So we can say that Colombia, Brazil, and Zambia are the three major emerald producers in the world, each one with their own characteristics. By the way, those that like mining and mining infrastructure, go to YouTube and watch the Belmont mine videos by GIA, and you can see a highly mechanized and highly modern facility extracting emeralds from that local mine. It's quite, and as you see, emeralds can be really nice quality. The idea that we have that Brazilian emeralds are more cabochon quality, not that good quality, that's not exactly that way. And we've mentioned this, the Asian sources of emerald. I'm not going to lose much time with this. What is now important is that we have so many sources that because of so many reasons, people like to know where things come from. So origin determination became relevant for many reasons. Sometimes it's because of history. People relate to historical sources like Colombia for emeralds, Burma for rubies, for instance. And there are also issues about traceability and responsible sourcing. So the new consumer, the millennial and the Generation Z, they want to know where things come from. And because they want to know if they were responsibly sourced. So that's another concern. And everything has to do with consumer demand. So if the consumer asks for Colombian, what can you do? And if the consumer asks for Sri Lankan sapphires, what can you do? So all those three things have to be taken into consideration. Many years ago, decades ago, origin determination was basically made with inclusions. And this gentleman, Edward Gublin, he started it. And when he looked into the interior of stones, particularly with emeralds, he knew that if he found this typical inclusion, which is called a three-phase inclusion. Why three-phase? Because we have three phases of the state of matter. We have solid. Look at the square. This is a square crystal or cubic crystal of salt. We have gas. We have a gas bubble here, and the rest is liquid. So we have three states: solid, liquid, and gas. Three phases. And when people looked into an emerald and saw a three-phase inclusion, it's okay, it's Colombian. Not anymore. Now we know that other sources can also have emeralds with this kind of inclusion, meaning that three-phase inclusions, as I learned when I was a student, doesn't mean anymore that the origin is probably Colombian. It can mean other sources like China, like Zambia, like Afghanistan. So three-phase inclusions are not the same as they used to be anymore. So that's why today, and I mentioned this gentleman, Gaston Giuliani, the geologist, you have to rely on very expensive instruments to measure the chemical composition of emeralds or the gemstones, so you can know exactly where they are from. And why can you do that? Because people like Vincent Pardieu, like Wim from GIA, they travel all around the world for mines, and they collect the samples on site, so the laboratories, they can build a reference collection. And chemical fingerprinting and isotopes in emeralds, they are really important, but they have to use this machine, the laser ablation inductively coupled mass spectroscopy. That's very difficult to say. We usually say ICP-MS and that's it. But this is a very sensitive instrument. It takes one technician to operate it. You're not necessarily a gemologist, and it's really expensive. A few hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the price of the equipment. But that's important, so you can make the characterization of, for instance, the isotopes or even other chemical elements. So gemological laboratories today, they are challenged to, not only for emeralds, but also for rubies and sapphires, to have the chemical characterization in many angles of the mineral, so you can figure out where the things come from. The thing is, this is not a science, because what is a science is to know the geological origin of an emerald. That you can know. To know what is geological environment of a crystal growth, you can get into that. But to know what country, geographically, sometimes the geology on one place, we know that can be the same as the geology in another place, because we know that in geology, what was like this 1 million years ago, sometimes it's apart 200 million years ago ahead. So that's why geology is much more reliable than geography in origin determination, meaning that origin determination is not an exact science, it's an opinion. So if you read gemstone reports, you will see that reports, they don't say that the emerald is from Colombia, that the emerald is from Zambia. Usually they say that they have characteristics that are consistent with Colombian origin or Zambian origin. Of course, the other things are in small letters. The name Colombia or Zambia or Russia come in bigger ones, but that's how they do. It's an opinion, not a fact. In conclusion, emeralds have been sourced, and this is the end. Emeralds have been sourced worldwide for millennia, particularly in Egypt and also in Austria. And we know that in Asia, especially in Afghanistan and Pakistan, they might have also been sourced. But we also know that before the Spanish arrived, also in Colombia, emeralds were being sourced by the locals. And eventually down the line in history, after the 19th century, they started to show up in Russia, and then in Brazil, in Ethiopia, in Zambia, and elsewhere in Africa. So occurs almost everywhere. And this is important, more important than the geographical origin determination, that is an opinion. What the scientists can do is to determine the geological origin of an emerald. So instead of saying, what is the cook, the name of the cook that made that plate, we know exactly the recipe, so, and how it was cooked. And that's what science can say. Origin in geography, maybe not. Geology, yes, we can be sure. And because we covered a lot of information today, you will receive tomorrow, I will try to put on your chat log links for this, but you will receive the proceedings of the second Emerald Symposium that took place in Bogota 2 years ago, and it was at the same time as the CIBJO Congress. And Gabriel Angarita, he was one of the organizers, and I also see some more people from the Emerald Symposium over here. And ICA, which is the International Color Gemstone Association, published one issue of In Color, which is the magazine that ICA produces every 3 months, only on emerald. So you have here 2 big books and 2 big resources of emerald information. You will receive it tomorrow. And because we have today Gabriel with us, and he will speak before we go into the Q&A and to the poll. He will give us a little talk. I'm going to give you the video and the microphone in a few minutes. Before, if you look at this picture, you see how emeralds were before and after the treatment. Antes means before, después means after. So this is the before and after and traditional emerald treatment that we call fracture filling. So and Gabriel, he will talk to us a little bit about that. So I'm going to call him upon the floor. Not good morning to you. I mean, for you it's good night. Now, Gabriel, you can push your video and you can have your video as you wish.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you very much for being here. And this is quite early in or late, depending, in Colombia. And really thank you. To have you here as a specialist, and you are director of the Gemmological Center in Bogota for the research, technological research on emeralds. You are the right person to teach us what is the emerald treatments. And sometimes people say, oh, the emerald has oil, and they say, oh, what is the oil? What is the treatment? And maybe you can explain all about that. And of course, you come from the country, Colombia, that produces probably the most beautiful emeralds in the world historically.
Okay, yes, we have a little time, so I will try to condense everything into what I can in this short time. But let's begin with what's treatment. What do we do? What has been done to emeralds since Cleopatra times?
Do you want
Every
me to,
emerald, as
do you
you
want me
said,
to share?
has, almost
sorry,
all of
Gabriel.
the emeralds have fissures, and those fissures are filled with, do you have the presentation there?
Of course.
Okay, so since those days, people were using oil. In those days, they only had olive oil. And I have this picture because one of the first substances used in emerald enhancement is water. Water is used to conceal all the imperfections or all the fissures that the emeralds have when they come out of the ground. So it's very usual that miners put the emeralds into water. They dip the emeralds into water, so when you're going to buy, you're going to see more clearly what are you going to get. So this is the first thing people use as an enhancement. The problem with water is it evaporates very easy and it dries very easy. That's why it's not a regular standard method to enhance the clarity of emeralds. We have out of 4 substances that they are considered enhancement by laboratories, and they are wax, oils, different kinds of oils, balms, and finally resins, which is resins are the most modern substance used for emerald enhancement. If we have the next slide, that's what really happens. The light, when you have a perfect emerald, which is less than 0.5% of all emeralds in the world, you have the light going through the stone in the most linear path light can travel. But as the light encounters one fissure filled with air, then the light cannot go straight. As they penetrate the stone, is going to go different ways, and that's why you see the fissures inside. So basically what we do is we try to find something to fill that gap so the light will go straight once again. That's the whole deal of emerald enhancement. Of course, if you see this example, some of the fissures there will not be covered completely because 2 things. One is very complicated for the substance to get there, or we have an empty space but cannot reach the surface. So it's impossible for any substance to go inside, and that's why you still, even with the enhancement, you will see some fissures are visible to the naked eye. What else can I say? Can you ask me something?
One question, Gabriel. Some people ask me, is it a traditional or a normal trade practice to fracture fill emeralds?
Well, yes. As I was telling, Since Cleopatra times, this practice has been done. That's why it's widely accepted by the trade that you can do some kinds of fillers. You can use some kinds of fillers. In the market, there are many. Every time people are experimenting with different things, different substances to improve and to make the filler more stable. The issue with fillers is that as they are more advanced, let's say it, they will cover much more the inclusions or the features. So it's going to be much more difficult for the buyer to see what's the real status of the stone. That's the whole issue with the treatments. Therefore, what the seller should do is have a full disclosure on what the stone has. That's the whole deal. It doesn't matter what it has. The matters is the full disclosure. Because it's impossible for you to see what's in the stone. Even if you try to take everything, once you put the resins or the oil inside, to take it out is really, really difficult. We have seen stones that they try to clean, and after 6 months, still there's something inside. And why we know there's something inside? Because we have piece of equipment, expensive piece of equipment that can see things that we cannot see with our own eyes. That's how we know.
So what you are saying is there is now, it doesn't matter that much what kind of filler, what kind of substance you put in the features. What is important is to know that it is there, and to disclose in every on the supply chain from the mine to the consumer, that everybody knows that the emerald has been filled with some substance.
Yeah, except one. There is one that really matters, and I will explain you why. It is the hardened resin. Why the hardened resin is very important? Because usually it was being done in the trade long time ago. People used to try to fill the gaps in rough emeralds with the hard resin, and this hard resin acts like a glue. So people suddenly were able to cut bigger stones, and that it was due to the fact that just give me a minute. I see my computer is running out of battery.
No problem.
Done. So people used to use this hard resin to let the stone stay together during the cutting process, and then therefore you could cut one big piece of emerald, but the stone was, because of this treatment previous to the cutting stage, they were stay together because of this hard resin. Yes, because the hard resin was letting the stone stay together. Then that's a very important issue, because suddenly if for some reason you take this enhancement out, you're going to have 2 or 3 stones. So when you have hard resin, you need to know that the stone probably is not always the case, but probably could be glued together. So that's why when the stone, when the filler is hard resin, people tend to reject. But personally, for me, since my point of view, hard resin is a great advancement in emerald enhancement, but the problem is some people use it with rough emeralds. So that's a big issue people should be aware of.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. I would like you not to go away from the computer if you can, because I'm sure that there are a lot of questions that you might be willing to answer much better than I do. So I'm going to kill your video and your microphone for the time being, and I will pass you on the floor if there is any difficult question that I don't know how to answer. So I say that you can do it for me. Thank you very much, Gabriel, for staying up so late or so early for us all. And we are almost, as you can see, more than 500 people still in the room today. So, and we are just about in 1 hour. So thank you very much, Gabriel. Muchas gracias, hombre.
Thank you, Rui. Thank you. I will stay here.
Take care. So everyone, thank you very much for being there for a few more minutes, and I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you, so we can go one by one and check the answers, check the replies. So emerald is a variety of course, it's a variety of beryl. Some people replied corundum, and that has an explanation, because corundum is it's when ruby is red and sapphire is blue, and there is another very valuable gemstone that we call emerald. Maybe because of that, people thought that is the same under the same material, but it is not. So emerald is a beryl, not a corundum at all. So number two, emeralds are usually eye clean, no inclusions, meaning that there are no inclusions visible to the naked eye. It's false. Emeralds are usually not eye clean. They are usually with things that we can see with the naked eye. That's why, as Gabriel was explaining, sometimes we need treatments, which is fracture filling, to disguise and to make, not to disguise, but to make light able to travel all across the stone and to make it more transparent, make it more beautiful. So it is false, of course. Number three, the following are historical emerald sources. Egypt, yes. Austria, yes. Colombia, yes. So it's all of the above. All of the three are historical sources, depending on what you consider historical. But Egypt is historical for us. Austria is historical for us, almost 2,000 years. And Colombia, if you consider historical only older than 1,000 years, maybe it's not for us Europeans, but it is definitely historical in Central America. So all of those three are actually historical sources. Number four, three-phase inclusions are proof of Colombian origin. When I was a student, I did learn that it was a proof of Colombian origin, but we know today that it's not anymore like it. So three-phase inclusions, which is solid, liquid, and gas, when we see it under the microscope, it's not anymore proof of Colombian origin. Now we can have other sources like Zambia, for example, where you can see three-phase inclusions as well, some Afghanistan material as well. So it doesn't mean Colombia anymore. And finally, origin determination is a universally agreed gemmological science. And here you have like a 50-50, because this is not easy to communicate, but I will try again my best to communicate what's in stake. Origin determination in terms of geography, it's not an exact science. And if you look at the gemmological report, you see that even the laboratories, on the small letters, they use a disclaimer saying that that is their opinion based on the available science. And sometimes, maybe not with emeralds, but with sapphires, we see that some laboratories, they, for the same stone, they issue a Madagascar or a Sri Lanka report, and they are both correct. So sometimes you can have those situations. That's why it's not an exact science, it's an opinion. And it must be stressed that origin determination is an opinion, expert-based opinion. Sorry for the redundance. But of course, the consumer demands for origin, and what can the trade do? I mean, the trade tries to deliver, and the laboratories, they do the best they can to deliver that information. Sometimes with a more percentage of assurance, sometimes with less. But that's how things are done. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing, and I'm going to look into the Q&A to see if I've got here any questions that I will be able to answer to you. As I said, I will only choose the easy ones, and I will leave the difficult ones for Gabriel. Which is the latest and largest emerald discovered from which mine? RP, I wouldn't know how to reply to this. What is the latest? I have been home for a long time, so I have no idea what's being discovered at this point. And the largest emerald discovered, each mine. We have a lot of big emeralds, and Colombia has for sure in the bank emeralds larger than 1,000 carats. Even in Brazil, you have emeralds larger than 5,000 carats. You saw the Incalamo emeralds larger than 5,000 carats. So even in Russia, you have big emeralds really weight thousands of carats. So, but I don't know them all by heart. I'm so sorry. This is a difficult one, and I'd have no idea. So what's the one easy way to find out if a crystal is a green beryl or an emerald? Aha, Praduman, that is a really good question, and that gives us room to discuss what's an emerald. If it is a varietal name, how do you define it? When I was a student, a gemmological student, I remember learning that an emerald is when you see a chromium lines on the handheld spectroscope. Okay, green color, chromium lines, and it is a beryl, so it's an emerald. But sometimes you don't see that much chromium lines in vanadium bearing emeralds, and you don't have only the Brazilian ones. And on that material from Afghanistan that come in very large sizes, they are rich in iron and very, very low, if any, chromium in there, but they look like emeralds. And what do you do? What is the criteria? That's why many people that are smarter than I am, they are discussing what to do with the subject, because you can make it really banalize the term emerald by having hundreds of stones of big size of a very light green color being called an emerald. So that's a concern for the trade, but that's a good question, and the trade, they are discussing as we speak. Not now, but they are discussing that subject. Quite a very important issue. Maybe you will hear more about that after the next CIBJA Congress next year or this year, hopefully. It's going to be in Dubai, or was supposed to be in Dubai in October. So Celine, is the feeling mentioned when you buy an emerald? Yes, of course. It's called disclosure, treatment disclosure. You should disclose. We all know that fracture filling is a common trade practice, and basically almost any emerald is filled with something. Sometimes what you have is a report saying that there are no evidences of fracture filling, and that's the advantage of non-filled emeralds, is when you have a report by a reputable gemmological laboratory saying that there are no evidences of the treatment. So when there are evident, the being treated is the normal. It's like the normal thing. Not being treated is the exception today. Gabriel, I'm going to give you the microphone. Did I say any wrong thing, Gabriel?
No, you're quite right. Yes, almost all emeralds are treated. We have seen very, very few emeralds which are not being enhanced or in one way or another. Because as you were saying, almost all emeralds, they have fractures that must be filled with something. If it's not an enhancement, it's going to be air. And that's where you have something that the buyers or the customers, they don't want to see.
Yeah, exactly. So by the way, while you were speaking, I remembered I forgot to put the links, the emerald download links on the chat log, but you won't be able to click on any of those links, but at least you will have you can maybe copy paste them into anything else, but you will all receive an email tomorrow with those links. If you don't receive the email, go to the junk mail and maybe you find it there. So let me try to find another easy question, hopefully an easy one. This is for you, Gabriel. Maybe you can help us. How accurate are laboratories in identifying the amount of treatment in emeralds? Gabriel, maybe this is for you. This is a difficult one.
Yeah, laboratories actually, is not only the amount of the filler, it's also where it's located and how does the filler affect the clarity of the stone. And it's a little bit difficult to say, but let's say we have two emeralds with the same amount of filler, let's say oil, for example. And one of the stones, they have the oil right in the table where you can see. If the oil goes out, you will see big crack in the surface. And you have the same thing, the same amount in the cullet, let's say. So one is going to affect more than the other. And it's also how is, what is the orientation of the fracture? If it's like laying down, even if it's a small amount, you're going to see a big crack because it's not parallel to the table, let's say. It's not perpendicular to the table. So you're going to be able to see it more easily. So we don't judge just the amount, but there's a subjective amount of, or a degree of, when we make a call, whether or not one stone is minor or moderate, which is how we classify the how the emerald is affected by the filler. So it's not just the amount. Amount is important, but also how does the filler affect the clarity of the stone.
And we have here, thank you, Gabriel, a lot of questions about what are the substances. You mentioned a few, but what is the most, or what are the most common substances in your experience, and do they differ in Brazil, in Colombia, in Zambia, and elsewhere?
Well, in Colombia, we see 90% of the stones, they are treated with liquid resin. There is a small amount of stones treated with oil. And there is a reason why, because oil doesn't work that well. It will go away very fast. And therefore people, they don't look to use oil. And also there's something else. There is no more natural oil for emeralds anymore. Even cedarwood oil, which was the most accepted filler, now 70% of that is produced in the lab and 30% is coming from the tree. So basically nowadays, everything is mostly laboratory made, and but people is using more liquid resin.
Okay. And there is another, we are so lucky to have you here, Gabriel. You have no idea, because the majority of questions are actually about treatments. And another interesting question is, are the treatments made in the rough and or in the cut material?
Both. Sometimes you can see in the rough, but when it's in the rough, it's going to be, depends, that depends, because usually if you are going to buy rough in Zambia, they usually dip their rough in baby oil. But this is a common, if you're going to buy rough, this is a common practice, and everybody knows the stones are being put in, they use some baby oil. And I was saying before, some stones, if they are very, if they are not going to withstand the cutting process, sometimes they use hard resin to allow the stone to be cut in a bigger shape. So sometimes they are treated in the rough, and sometimes they are, I mean, most of the time they are treated when they are cut. But there is one issue. When they are treated in the rough, the stone is going to get weaker. So here when you go to the mines, and people go to the mine to buy rough, sometimes they buy, and we call it in Spanish, cooked. They have been cooked, because some miners, they use this treatment, and you see the rough much more beautiful than it should be. And
what
once
is
you're
the word
cutting,
in Spanish? Cocinado?
Cocinado in Spanish. Yeah, cooked. So the stone is going to look better, but once you start cutting, the stone is going to have different appearance as the one you saw in the mine.
Interesting. And another question is, are the treatments acceptable? What are the acceptable treatments and the non-acceptable? Just before you answer, in CIBJO, the only thing that is acceptable or not is the disclosure process. You can do whatever you wish with the stone, but you must disclose. And not disclosing is the unacceptable thing, not the treatment itself. I don't know, Gabrielle, if you want to add something, because people ask me, is the treatment accepted or is the treatment not accepted? What is your vision?
As we were saying, emeralds have been treated since Cleopatra times. So this is commonly accepted. But the most important thing is to let the customer know and to understand very well what are you selling, because we have different degrees of enhancement, and depending on that is going to affect more or less how the stone is going to look. And it's very, very important to let the customer know what's the amount, and not only that, but how to take care of the stone, because I usually prepare some Instagram videos. And I'm preparing one because sometimes the thing is that people, they don't know how to handle emeralds in general. And many jewelers, they don't know because they think these emeralds are like rubies or like any corundum, like diamonds that you can heat them or dip them in rhodium or steam them. And with emeralds, it's a little bit more, a little bit different from that. You have to take care more of the emeralds than other stones.
Yes. Gabriel, we have time for one more question. There is one here interesting. By the way, Antoinette Madeline, she's on the audience, and she asked me not to forget to mention North Carolina emeralds. You are quite right, Antoinette. I forgot to mention North Carolina. I'm so sorry. North Carolina in the US, of course. And so thank you very much for remembering me. But Gabriel, I was saying, before we close, and I will give you the closing remarks, and somebody's asking about the durability, and you've mentioned briefly, and the durability of the treatments of the fracture filling, and what would be your comment on that unfinished jewelry?
Okay, the durability, if that's the case, the most stable treatment is hard resin. That's the more stable one because it gets hard and won't get out of the stone in your lifetime. The problem with hard resin is, as I was saying, that the stone must be treated with hard resin after the cutting process. Then the liquid resin is going to stay longer. And finally, we have the oil. The oil is the most, let's say, in terms of stability, unreliable one. So if you have cedarwood oil in stone, after a month or a week, or depending on the conditions in which you store the good, you're going to see that it's going to come out of the stone. That's maybe the reason why when people buy expensive piece of emerald, they want it with the cedarwood oil, because cedarwood oil is going to go away very, very fast.
Exactly. So folks, it's 18 minutes after the hour. I have no more time to be here replying to so many questions, and we have 55 question tickets here. I hope that you don't take me as unpolite for not answering all your questions. It's quite impossible to go over so many of them. And also on the chat log, you have so many things that you've said that it will be impossible for me to go over all of them. Gabriel, I would like you to thank you very much for being here with us today so early. I know that you will be joining us in the afternoon session, which is a more convenient hour for you in Bogota. So thank you very much, Gabriel. I don't know if you want to say any closing remarks before I close down the webinar.
No, I just want to thank you. It's an honor to have to be invited. And any question, I know I see there's a lot of questions, and some are same questions, but I'm available for anyone who has a question, and I will try to answer, because I'm also running the lab, and it's sometimes a little bit difficult to answer to all of them.
Can I share? I think I've shared with all of them your email, but maybe you will be flooded with emails. But how can people reach out to you for explanations?
And in the chat, I will post my email and my Instagram
Okay.
account.
CEO at
So
gemlabcdtech.com.
yes, and
Okay, it's
my
on the chat. Thank you very
and my
much.
and my Instagram, I will post it right away in Garita995. So there I post some videos and things. So I'll try to answer as soon as possible.
Let me see if I can share your Instagram, because I do think I've got it here. Barebumbi. No, not this one. Oh, by the way, everybody, this is the discussion made by, it was an article by Michael Chemnitsky and Laurent Cartier and more people from SSCF. It was published on In Color, and it discussed the color varieties and what is at stake when you are discussing color varieties. And this is the slide I've shown you. I took that slide from this article. So make sure you also look out to this. This is my LinkedIn. Okay, this is my Instagram. How do you say your Gabriel Angarita?
No, Angarita995. Yes, that's one.
Okay.
That's one.
This is Gabriel Zangarita Instagram. So now you will have like more 300 followers, and from the message you can have a chat and you can ask Gabriel whatever you wish, and he will be happy to answer. As a passionate gemologist and a emerald lover, I'm sure that he will give the answers with a lot of passion. So Gabriel, thank you very much for joining us today, and we will see each other this afternoon. And I was unable to turn your video on again, so now only your picture on the screen, but doesn't matter. Your voice is quite distinguishable. So thank you very much for coming, Gabriel, and every one of you. Now I can see you.
Now you see, I have your same haircut now.
Yes, it's very fashionable. Yes, I use it for many years. Muchas gracias.
Take care. See you in the afternoon.
Take care. And everybody, thank you very much for coming. And if you want to repeat, there are still some room in the, I'm sure you will not want to repeat this one, but we have some room also in the afternoon session at 6 o'clock, Lisbon and or London time. And it was great having you. And Friday, the webinar will be on diamonds. So tomorrow, even today on my social media, you will have all the links available, and tomorrow on your emails we have the links on the next webinar on Friday that will be on diamonds. A little bit of history, famous diamonds, and how to value diamonds. It's going to be a really general overview, something that we can do in 50 minutes, which is the amount of time that we use on speaking, to give you some time for Q&A. So we are 23 minutes past the hour. It's way over my schedule. So thank you very much. See you on Friday, and anything that you wish to ask me, try to type it. And if I have the time, I will be really happy to reply. So bye-bye, take care and stay safe.